Okay, we're continuing with Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, Pete Rogers, alphabetical order. We're doing Friedrich Nietzsche. Okay, so he was the German philosopher from the late 1800s, and a lot of people have mixed feelings about him. On the one hand, he was brilliant, he was real smart, but he's also crazy. He was also a jerk. He was also a homosexual in like a confused way. A lot of times you'll see that as homosexuals try to find like a resonance with the ancient Greeks, because there was some homosexuality in the ancient Greeks, but really not that much. It's totally exaggerated out of proportion. And he very much hated Christianity, and he would always mock and criticize Christianity. But the problem is, what are you going to replace it with? He had nothing to replace it with. Okay, his hero in life was like Napoleon. What was Napoleon? Napoleon was just sort of a tyrant that went around conquering everybody. Yeah, Napoleon was a genius, okay? And people kind of thought, well, maybe he could unify Europe. But anyways, he also was sort of thought, Bismarck was great. So he really liked these military guys, kind of in a sense like Machiavelli loved Cesare Borgia because he thought he could maybe unify Italy. But what I'm also getting at is, his hero of the ancient Greeks was Dionysius, okay, who was sort of violent and crazy. So Nietzsche really didn't have any cohesive philosophy of life or message. He did recommend being nonconformist, so I think that's good. You can't achieve anything if you're conformist. To be conformist just means to blend in with the herd and to never do anything interesting. So you have to be nonconformist. And that's like the starting point of ever doing anything unique or great. But anyways, do a couple quotes in Nietzsche. Make the development of yourself the creation of a work of art. Someone who has completely lost his way in a forest, but strives with uncommon energy to get out of it in whatever direction, sometimes discovers a new unknown way. This is how geniuses come into being, who are then praised for their originality. Yeah. Okay, that's actually a very good quote. Okay, next one. Art is the proper task of life. Art is the great stimulus to life. We have art so that we shall not die of reality. So long as you are praised, think only that you are not yet on your own path, but that of another. Yeah, exactly. If you just do conventional medicine, everyone says, oh, you're doing good. You start having an original idea, they're like, uh-oh. Okay, Nietzsche. Great minds are skeptical. A mind that aspires to great things is necessarily skeptical. There's a lot of truth in that because most conventional stuff is nonsense. Okay, Nietzsche continues. Creation, that is the great salvation from suffering. The truth serves life. To improve one's style means to improve one's thoughts. He did have a good style of writing, where he could sort of like flip a phrase on its back. Okay, belief in truth begins with doubting all that hitherto had been believed to be true. So that's kind of like a Descartes type of quote. The doer alone learneth. The great man is colder, less hesitating, and without fear of opinion. He lacks the virtues that accompany respect and respectability, and altogether everything that is of a virtue for the herd. If he cannot lead, he goes alone. He knows he is incommunicable. He finds it tasteless to be familiar. When not speaking to himself, he wears a mask. There is a solitude within him that is inaccessible to praise or blame. Yeah, sort of talking, what is that, like the Sigma male. You have to stand alone, stand apart if you're going to do anything interesting. So there's truth in all that. To one who is accustomed to thinking a lot, every new thought that he hears or reads about immediately appears as a link in a chain. Yeah, that's what it's like when you're breaking into a new field and trying to really understand it. You get these key insights that give you a lot, a new conceptual leap to work from. The best German book ever is on Peter Eckermann's Conversations with Goethe from 1836 to 1848. Okay, Nietzsche also really liked the pre-Socratics better than Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. He kind of thought a lot of the so-called modern intellectuals, the whole Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, that they were a bunch of wussies, okay? Too Apollonian, not enough Dionysian. Okay, he preferred the boldness of the Iliad and the Odyssey and the pre-Socratic philosophers compared to Plato and Socrates. He thought that Plato and Socrates were kind of whining, nagging pains in the butt. Let's see here. He felt the major goal of philosophy was self-improvement. Okay. He saw himself as the educator of higher man. Okay, now here's some of the stuff that's a little bit good. From Thus Spake Zarathustra. He says, to lure many away from the herd, that is why I have come. How to reinstitute that yearning for greatness in a world which is stripped of the sacred and all higher values and ideals, and is increasingly becoming inhospitable to it. The individual has always struggled to be kept from being overwhelmed by the group. If you try it, you will be lonely often and sometimes frightened, but no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. He really admired Schopenhauer in his early days, when in his youth, but he later came to see Schopenhauer as too pessimistic and weak. He didn't like weakness. Here is Nietzsche. Verily, I have often laughed at the weaklings who thought themselves good because they have no claws. You know, morality is the best of all muzzles for leading of mankind. Okay. The surest way of ruining a youth is to teach him to respect those who think as he does more highly than those who think differently from him. Yeah, conformity. That's what they teach in the public schools. Okay, Nietzsche continues. What is originality? To see something that has no name as yet, and hence cannot be mentioned, although it stares us all in the face. The way men usually are, it takes a name to make something visible to them. Those with originality have, for the most part, also assigned names. Yeah, that's true. A lot of times, everybody knows there's something different, something wrong, or the conventional way of looking at things isn't accurate. But nobody can put a word on it, okay? Then the person who does something brilliant is the one who can summarize it, clarify it, explain it, say what everyone's thinking but can't articulate. Okay, that's it for part one. We'll do some more Nietzsche in a little bit, part two.